I want to say thank you to Social Media Cowboys for sponsoring this week's episode of the Confidence Through Health podcast. If you need help with a website, if you need social media needs for your business, if you need help with AdWords, SEO, all those things that you know you should be doing but you are too busy to do or you're too confused about, they are the experts that you need in your corner. If you're interested in launching a podcast such as mine, they help me edit my podcast and do a fantastic job making sure that all of the technical side of it is handled and we launch a nice, neat, edited podcast episode each week. So I want to thank Social Media Cowboys for their continued sponsorship of the Confidence Through Health podcast. You can find them at socialmediacowboys.com, or you can find them as well with other sponsors at confidencethroughhealth.com. Welcome back to the Confidence Through Health podcast. This is episode number 84, a conversation that I had with Kelley Sgroi. She is a licensed mental health counselor, therapist, and life coach. And we talk about mental health. We talk about the ways to change your mindset from a negative one to a positive one, the ways to relieve stress, and why you would want to do that. And we talk about the law of attraction, which she is really great at explaining how this works, both internally and externally, with your body, with your mental health, with your physical health. And we talk about this past year being a tough year and how to look forward to making positive changes next year, which I think we all are looking forward to. So how to make 2021 a great year, how to set that up from a mental health perspective, and how to deal with the obstacles and challenges that come up as we go through things that happen during a tough year like we've had in 2020. So I hope you all enjoy this conversation and interview with Kelley Sgroi. So thank you, Kelley, for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Jerry, for having me. I'm super excited to chat.
Yeah. So I haven't had a lot of people on that deal with more of the mental side of health. I've dealt a lot more with physical as far as having guests on and talk about that side of it. So I'm really excited about what you can offer to our listeners. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about how you got into the mental health counseling and why is that something that you felt that you needed to pursue?
Yeah, I haven't always been a therapist, actually. And I had a 20 plus year career as a dental hygienist. The last 7 years of my career, I taught dental hygiene. And I really was burnt out, looking for something that was a change. And there were so many things that had happened in my own life that kind of led me through to the counseling route. At that point in time when I was dealing with that burnout, I had just finished treatment for breast cancer. So I had finished chemo and radiation and a whole bunch of surgeries. And I started thinking about, what I wanted to do when I grew up. Right. And I went back to school thinking I would actually go into oncology counseling and work with cancer patients. So when I started my therapy program, that was my idea.
Yeah.
As I got working, I also, thought, wow, our adolescent girls are, a mess right now. I have a daughter. She's 22 now, but at the time she was, adolescent, and she just couldn't make a good decision to save her life.
Okay.
And I was seeing how our girls were dealing with so much over social media, and, they were cutting behaviors, and, they were sending naked pictures around, and just so many things happening with our adolescents. Then I was like, oh, well, maybe this is the path that I want to take. The universe had all different plans for me. When I graduated, I started applying for anything that would hire me, basically without a license, because there's a whole process there. And I started out in methadone maintenance. So I showed up one day for an interview at like 8 a.m. to a methadone clinic, having no idea what I was dealing with. I didn't even know what I was interviewing for. And it turned out to be the very best job of my entire career, like from ever working. I started off on this team. I had an amazing supervisor. We were just like a family, and I found myself thriving in that environment. Then, life changed and I ended up moving down here to Florida. And over the 2 years that I've been here, kind of branched out on my own and started my own practice. And at the same time, discovered along the way, oddly, that my passion is really working with women and helping women on their journey to becoming who they really are. Because I think for so much of my life, I was playing out a role that had all these expectations of who I should be, which led me down this burnout path, and nothing felt aligned. And then I started kind of embracing what worked for me and what felt good. And, my true passion right now is the majority of my clients that find me are women.
Right.
And that's kind of how I ended up in this place. I was a good hygienist.
It's interesting that I think your initial thought was breast cancer and cancer counseling, and now you're dealing with women, and so it's maybe not the exact outcome as far as what you're actually counseling for, right? But it's neat how it you connected with the right clientele.
Yeah. What I ended up doing, my whole dynamic, I think, and what I teach and how I integrate counseling with my clients is that we're all presented struggles. We all are presented with challenges in our life, no matter what. There's we hear that, when bad things happen to good people. Well, bad things happen to all people, just like good things happen to all people. Things happen to people. It's how we react to it. And, when I got sick, I had the opportunity to sit there and feel bad and be negative and go, oh my gosh, I could die. Yeah. Or I could take that opportunity and see how I would be able to use it to help other people. And I think that that's part of living a fulfilling life is how we can take our challenges and utilize them to see opportunities in them. And I think from a mental health perspective, we're still, the stigma around that mental health is still there. We're still so stuck in a diagnosis, right? We're still stuck in, I have depression, I have bipolar disorder, whatever it is. And people are not able to move through that. But we don't stop and say, I have diabetes, I can't exercise, I have diabetes, I can't keep living my life. So why with mental health do we go, well, I can't do those things because I'm bipolar? We still have this labeling process. So I try to steer my clients away from that. The people that I work with, I avoid that whole diagnosis piece if possible, because I don't treat anybody differently. Just like, you're still going to treat somebody from a physical perspective as a human being, not as diabetes, not as, heart disease. You're going to treat them how to get healthy. So from the mental aspect, if we approach it from that point of view, we take that stigma and that shame away from it. Most people aren't ashamed to have diabetes. Right. But they're certainly ashamed to have, panic disorder.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I think that's a lot of that is, as we were talking a little bit before we started recording about mindset, and it's that mindset shift that not just the person dealing with it, but all of us need to probably have when it comes to, the labeling of different mental health issues that a lot of times we all exhibit at some point.
Without a doubt.
We all exhibit depression. Maybe it's not to the clinical level, but we all exhibit depression, and sometimes all of us do it on a daily basis.
Absolutely. I think one of the funniest things for me, and funny and not in a ha-ha way, but in an interesting way, is that when I share with my clients about anxiety, right? Like I had some surgery this summer, and the night before my surgery, I was like, gosh, I have such bad anxiety. And I'm like, why am I anxious? Oh, because you're having surgery. Right. Pretty normal reason to have anxiety.
Yeah.
And I was sharing that with a client, and he was like, you get anxiety? And I'm like, of course I do. I'm human. We all experience it. The difference for me is that I have used my physical body as a way to get in touch with it. So when I experience that feeling, that, pit in my stomach, which is where I get anxiety. Some people get that racing heart. Some people feel like they can't swallow. Mine is that pit in my stomach. I stop for a second and I get in touch with what I'm thinking about. And I can go, where are my thoughts? My thoughts are on a surgery and what could happen and what the outcome is going to be and how I'm going to recover. And then I can go, well, no wonder I have anxiety. So what do I do about it? I can take a step back and go, I don't have to worry about that until that happens. Today, I'm not in surgery, so I can focus on this minute. And one of the things I try to work with my clients on is recognizing that we don't even know if what's going to happen or what we fear is going to happen is actually even going to happen. My surgery could have been canceled, right? I mean, I would have been worried sick all day long about something that didn't occur.
Yeah.
And so we waste all that time worried and sick because anxiety really has that ability to make us so sick. And then the event may not even happen.
Right.
So I read, I think it was Dr. Joe Dispenza probably said it, that 85% of what we worry about never happens.
Oh yeah.
Which is a huge amount, you know?
I mean, and like you said, how many of those things are big enough that you spent a day or a week?
Yes. Or not sleeping, right? All that sleep.
It was consuming you and, preventing you from doing other things when, it never even, manifested. And then you're sitting there going, oh, you don't realize. And I think a lot of us don't realize what the opportunities and possibilities we left behind in that worrisome moment.
And how much that thought, those, debilitating thoughts affected our physical body as well. Right. Mm-hmm. So from a physical standpoint, we're exhausted, that stress response. First of all, our brain is releasing cortisol and adrenaline like over and over. And that's now our body's trying to process this chemical response. So we're in this like active stress, fight or flight mode for all of this time. No wonder we're exhausted when it's over.
Right.
It's like, if you're the deer being chased by a predator for, 10 miles, you're going to sleep for a long time if you happen to get away.
Yeah.
So, but our body can't heal if we're constantly in a place of stress.
Right.
So thinking about how I love this example I use a lot. If I'm worried about paying my bills, which most people lose sleep over, right?
Right.
And I don't sleep all night long because I'm worried about paying my bills. And like, how am I going to pay this bill? Then I go to work and I'm exhausted and I see clients and I'm not spot on. I'm not on my A game. I'm like dragging and I can't give them good feedback. Well, they don't want to come see me anymore. So then I don't get paid.
Right.
So what happens? I can't pay my bills.
Yeah.
So we get ourselves on this hamster wheel of, repeating this cycle. And I've been so guilty of it so many times in my life. But when I found a different way of that mindset approach, that's taking a minute and saying, okay, what's my brain doing right now? And how do I feel about it?
Right.
And how is my body responding? I really have been able to step back and just allow things to play out, moving forward with some faith.
Right. Well, and oftentimes whether it's that stressor that you've got a project that's due. And so you're leaning into that and you're spending all your time on that. Or like you said, you're worried so much about, paying the bills or doing something. It's a lot of times your physical body you won't see that symptom show up until after, whatever it is passes, that
Yes.
deadline for the project passes and all of a sudden you get sick. And it's like,
Yes.
why am I getting sick? Is because you stressed your body so much, but you were able to
Yes.
push through it. And then once it stops, your body goes, okay, now I got to recover and we got to get rid of all this stuff and it's going to make you sick to get rid of it.
I totally agree with that 100%. And I feel like I'm a prime example of it right now. A few weeks ago, I was so stressed and I wasn't feeling in alignment with some of the things that were happening in my business and in my process. And I just couldn't get a grip on it. Like I was just like pushing and pushing and pushing. And finally was like, okay, I need to take a step back here and get in alignment, and made some changes. And within like 4 days, I started coughing.
Yeah.
And I had a fever. And the next thing I knew, I went and got tested and was positive for COVID and had no idea where it came from. And I can honestly tell you, like the last 2 weeks, this is not how I planned on spending the last several weeks of the year. I had so much to do. And my body was like, oh, heck no, you are flat out. You're not doing anything.
Yeah.
And so pushing and worrying and stressing, that physical result, it comes in somewhere along the lines, whether we're aware of it or not. For me, it's usually very apparent. I get sick and when I get sick, I'm like down for the count for a while. But for other people, it shows up in high blood pressure that they're not aware of to begin with until, God forbid, they have a heart attack, or, it shows up as migraines that go misdiagnosed as, migraines when it's really their body's response to this ongoing stress.
Yeah.
And that can go on, chronic pain.
Right.
We know chronic pain can be caused from, I say it for myself, I store emotional stuff physically. So when I have pain, I have to look at what I'm carrying from other people, because I've learned to emotionally detach. But our bodies, they respond to this, the stuff in our environment and what we're thinking and doing. And so that mind-body connection is so huge. We really take, I think, for granted how connected the two parts are. We think of them separate,
Well, and that's great, because you're leading into really what I want to talk about next, which is, and we've talked about this before when we first met, is the law of attraction. And and even within your body, but also externally, and like you just said, like that mind body connection. And that if you eat things that are going to be negative to your digestive system, they're going to create a negative environment in your brain and your mind as well. And same thing's going to happen externally, so talk to us about like the challenges that you've seen with that and how you help people walk through and notice that like that's a part of what's going on in their life.
Yeah. One of the biggest parts of that is, and we've talked about this also, the sugar aspect, right? Because I work with a lot of one of my specialties is substance abuse. And so that sugar has that same chemical reaction in our brain, it releases all those feel good, endorphins to begin with. And then just like alcohol or drugs, we get that crash, like caffeine, we get that crash afterwards. And I see this, with so many of my clients that are trying to stay clean and sober. They're filling their body with just sugary treats and snacks. And, if you go to any AA meeting, what is there? Cookies and coffee, and people are pouring sugar. And so one of the things that I do a lot of counseling around that as well, about how, our brain is constantly getting that chemical dump as well, just like our body is from that sugar. We eat something sweet for that little boost. And not only does our body crash a few hours later, but so does our brain.
Right.
So that's definitely a huge part of it. Law of attraction is so big, law of attraction saying that, that which is like we invite into our experience, right? What we think about is what we attract.
Right.
And if we think about, the positive things and opportunities and abundance, then not only does it feel better, but those things start to show up in our experience. Whereas when I'm thinking about how miserable I am and how scarce my bank account is, or how lonely you could feel, all of those things. One, what do I invite that into my experience? Because misery just loves company.
Right.
And it feels bad, right? I know that my body is feeling horrible when I'm thinking like that.
Yeah.
So changing how I think really is as simple as getting in touch with how I feel. If I feel bad, I have to ask myself, what am I thinking about?
Right.
And, even being sick over the last couple of weeks, when I felt the worst was when I was going, oh my gosh, I'm never going to feel better. But when I woke up in the morning and I said, hey, I'm going to feel better today, even if it's for a half an hour, I'm going to get outside and get some fresh air. There was an increase in my energy level, and that thought process, I was able to get outside and take a walk and just invite more pleasure. I saw an otter on a dock, playing in the sun, which I was like, whoa, what is that? An otter? Like, geez, welcome to Florida. Anything's possible. Cool. So, but I would have missed that, right? If I was stuck in that miserable, poor me, I wouldn't have been out. I wouldn't have been looking for joy.
Yeah.
And, I always like to talk about Dr. Joe because he's so amazing. The things that he comes up with, I wish I would think of these things like he does. But he says, we wait until we're miserable to make changes in our life. We wait until we're so uncomfortable that we can't stand it anymore. But imagine if we made those changes when we were joyful. Like if we said, wow, I'm going to just embrace my growth today.
Right.
Because I feel so good. The opportunities are endless. How much growth we'd have instead of starting from this place of, oh my gosh, this is horrible, right? But I mean, from a mental perspective, from a mental health perspective, people come to me when they can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Just like from a physical standpoint, people reach out for guidance on their physical health when they're sick, when they're overweight, when their doctor says you need to do something about this because if you don't, you're not going to live another 5 years. But if we just kept everything in tune, right, then we would be so much further ahead of this process.
Right. Well, and I love that thought process of not waiting until you're miserable.
Right.
Because, think about the struggle that you have to go through when you're miserable to get back to where you want to be.
Right.
How long that takes. Well, what if when things are great, you put that energy into it? How much farther ahead could you be? And what does that do to the bottom then as well? Because it raises the bottom as well. Like when you're miserable, you won't be as miserable because you can't sink that low anymore.
Right. Well, and that is such a good point too, because think about if you're miserable, it's almost impossible to even see a way out, right? We just go, it's so overwhelming. Just like if you've gained 50 pounds, you can't see a plus to that because you're like, I'm not going to see any difference in my body until I lose 30 of it.
Right.
But if you start at a higher level and you go, oh, wow, well, I'm not feeling great. I think after the holidays, I've ingested so much unhealthy food. I need to maybe take a step back and get healthier, get some more exercise, eliminate some sugar, something like that.
Yeah.
You're starting from a different point. But if you're, 50, 100 pounds overweight and you can't get out for a walk and your body is so bogged down by chemicals, it's so overwhelming. Same thing with your mind. When everything in your life seems like it's a disaster, like you're living in a battlefield, there's like, it's so hard to get up. It's
Right.
almost like that. I was speaking with someone yesterday, and she was coming from so many directions. And I said, you have to take a step back. You can't learn to speak Spanish fluently in one day. You can
Right.
only learn a few words at a time and put them in a sentence.
Yeah.
And in a few months, maybe you'll know it fluently, but you can't repair 40 years today.
Yeah.
We have to start here with one thing, one thought, one new habit, one new way of processing something, one new walk around the block, eliminate one food that's not good for you.
Yeah.
But if we try to tackle it all, it's so debilitating that
Right.
I wouldn't get out of bed. I'd be like, forget it. That's
Yeah.
too much work.
Yeah.
So if we started from a higher place, how much easier it would be to get there.
Right. Well, and I love what you say, because I try to preach the same thing, in that it's the small steps, and don't try and go after that big, huge goal. I mean, you need to have that out there, but that's not what you need to focus on every day,
Right.
because it's the small steps that will compound, and then eventually you'll go look back and go, oh wow, look at everything I was able to get past and overcome just by doing these little small things. Whereas, yeah, when you look at it and you say 50 pounds, oh my gosh, that is so much weight. There's no way I can lose 50 pounds.
Right.
And automatically you've set yourself back just from
Absolutely.
the mindset of it and how you talk about it. But like you said, if you just say, I can go today without eating, a candy bar. Well, if you accomplish that and string that along days after days, you'll notice a change, and you'll want to make other changes.
Absolutely.
So, and I think the mental health side of that with affirmations.
One thought,
is huge.
right? If we change one thought today, one negative thought to a positive thought, and then that thought it carries over to tomorrow. So now
Right.
that's already in there. And then we add another new positive thought. Before we know it, and again, this is law of attraction at the same time. Focus
Yep.
on goodness and string a whole lot of good thoughts together. And before you know it, you have this huge string of good thoughts.
Right.
And that string of good thoughts carries over from day to day to day. The negative stuff's going to do the same thing, but doesn't it feel better to think positive, to think about good
Right.
stuff? To focus on one thing, whether it's the flower that's poking up out of the dirt in
Right.
March because you've got a warm day, how cute that little flower is. Like, oh my gosh, when I see that first flower in spring, I'm like, wow. For me, that otter playing on a dock in the middle of a neighborhood on a canal,
Yeah.
like, where did that come from? Just
Right.
those simple things, but we give so much power to our expectations. And I love what you said about the goal. I say this all the time. We always have this goal that's like way up there,
Right.
somewhere down the road. And most of us never get started because it's so far away. We can't see it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But if I just take a step today towards it and then realize that somewhere along the line, this is what happened for me in my profession. My goal completely changed, right? That goal was, my goal was to finish school and then get a bachelor's degree and teach dental hygiene. And then and that was my goal. And I was like, I'm never going back to school. And then like all of a sudden I was like, darn, I'm going back to school. And I was 40 and I went back to school to get a master's degree, and I was like, how did this, and everyone's like, you're crazy. Why don't you just keep doing this? And I'm like, cause this isn't where I want to be. I see something different. So my goals along the line have changed drastically. My original goal was get married, have a family. I did that. And then, that didn't play out the way I thought it would. So I had to take those opportunities as they were presented to me and say, okay, what am I really supposed to be doing? And if I'm doing something, and this is what happened to me a few weeks ago, what I was approaching was not resonating with me. And it threw me into this stress cycle of going, this isn't good. And I was trying to force it. Like, I'm going to make it work.
Right.
And when I finally stopped forcing it and said, it's not going to work, this is not who I am, I was able to get more clear on what it is that I want to do. And then I got sick. And that was my body's pure way of saying, okay, you ran yourself down and now you need to recover.
Right.
And I know my body well enough to know that, I invite those things in through my stress response. My my body knows that I'm not stopping unless I get sick. So
right.
It's like, I should know that better by now, but it usually takes that couple weeks later for me to go, oh, I should have listened a couple weeks ago. Maybe I wouldn't be sick.
Right.
But
right.
For me, I recognize that this is a pattern. At the end of the year, I seem to get sick every year. It's that year long of pushing through, and we come on the holidays and we're like, so much to do. And then I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So maybe 2021, I'll get the hint and I'll start like slowing down in September. So that'll be my goal for 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something new. Let's try it.
As an athlete, that's one of the things that happens though in training as well. And I think a lot of people, especially in America, there's other countries that do this much better as far as taking time off, being able to put things away. But in America, we've built this ideal or this craving for just not stopping. You can't stop.
Do more.
More. And as an athlete, it's one of the things that's hard for me because I want to keep training and get better and get better and get better and better. But then I know if I don't take that time off, like I'm going to get hurt, and so it's like you have to take the time off periodically, not all, but you have to plan that into it. And I find when I plan that into the process, well, mentally it works a lot better.
Yeah.
And
your expectations are different for yourself, I totally get that. I mean, I started running again not that long ago. And I swore this time, I was going to do the Couch to 5K, like by the book.
Right.
And then I started off by the book and I was like into the 4th week and I was feeling really good. And so I started like going, all right, I'm just going to run a little more. And now instead of taking a day off in between, I'm going to run today too. Right. And now it's been 3 weeks since I've done anything because I've been sick and could barely walk around the block. Yeah. But it's the same thing, our body, it tells us, it gives us so many warning signs, just like our mind, it gives us these warning signs, it says something's not working. Yeah. And we're just really good at ignoring it. We just have that. We've been programmed so well to keep pushing through and to be more and do more and accomplish more. And, that saying always like haste makes waste, like all of these, we have all of these like things from childhood, like the rabbit, the tortoise and the hare, and all of these things that should be telling us like these things happen and they're all there for a reason. Yeah. But we, like me, I learned the hard way for so many things, like so many things I'm able to stop and take a look at. And then the other things I go, oh, that was a warning sign right there. Like, I should have paid attention to that one. Yep. So again, turning those things around and using them as ways to help other people. I just saw somebody post in a Facebook group about, wow, I have bronchitis. I always get it this time of the year. And I'm like, oh, go get checked because, I've been hearing people saying they have sinus infections and the next thing you know, they're testing positive for COVID. This thing's presenting in so many different ways. Right. Like go get checked out and catch it early. Yeah. Your body's telling you something. Right.
Well, and a lot of times it's the same way with your mental health. You may think that like I said about, we all get depressed at different points and sometimes every day. And like, sometimes those little things that are happening, like those triggers, you may be able to avoid that if you can identify the trigger. But if you don't go get help, if you don't go ask somebody who knows and can identify things, then it can go, why are you doing this before that happens?
I love that. I use this example because it's so clear for me when I finally realized it. Like I can't listen to a voicemail that my father sends. So if my father calls me and he leaves me a voicemail, I delete it and call him back, because when he leaves me a voicemail, it's like this gruff, Kelley, it's your father.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge trigger for me from childhood,
Oh, yeah.
He's an amazing person, but he's loud, and he's loud, and he's loud on his voicemails. And so when I get the voicemail, I have to delete it. And then I just call him back and he's like, hello, what are you doing? And it's all cheerful and happy and calm and everything's good.
Right.
And like, I've never told him. I'm just like, oh, yeah, I will make sure he doesn't watch this.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, no, I just called you back. I didn't even bother listening to it. I just figured, I'd call you. Yeah. But I learned a while back that when I listen to his voicemails, my body responds negatively. And I'm like, oh God, what did I do wrong? Am I in trouble? And I'm like, I'm old. I'm too old to be feeling that way about my dad. Mm-hmm. And so I just don't do it. I just don't listen to it. And it makes a huge difference. That one little thing changes how I'm going to feel the rest of the day.
Right.
So when I have clients that say, when I do this, it's like, when I do this, it hurts. Well, don't do it. When I have this conversation, I feel really bad. When I argue with this person, I get anxiety, or when I think about this, I'm depressed. Well, why are we continually putting ourselves through that?
Right.
We say that, depression is living in the past and thinking about all of our mistakes and all of the things that didn't go a certain way. And anxiety is worry. It's worrying about the future, what's coming. Well, if we stayed in today, in just this moment with what's happening right now, there's nothing that happened 10 minutes ago I can do anything about.
Right.
Once it's gone, it's gone. I can't change it. Yeah. And there's nothing that's going to happen in 5 minutes that I can do anything about. A meteorite could hit the earth in 5 minutes. I can't do anything about it. Right. So sitting here worrying, going, oh, what happens in 5 minutes if a meteorite hits the earth? It's going to do what it's going to do.
Yeah.
So if I stay present in just this moment in time, I've solved my problem of depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely the clinical component to depression.
Right.
We definitely at times need that chemical adjustment. However, I also believe that if we are using our mind and body in connection and feeding our body properly and getting the exercise that we need, and we're catching it before we've gotten to that chemical change, we can avoid medications, at least for the long term.
Right.
Again, type 2 diabetes.
Right.
We don't always need to be on medication for type 2 diabetes if we do the things that we need to do.
Right. Yep.
And mental health is not all that different from that perspective. If we keep a growth mindset about it, we get that fixed mindset around this is who I am, and we focus on that. I can't achieve that because I have depression. I can't do that because I have bipolar. I can't ever live like that because I have whatever. I have anxiety.
Yeah.
And finding ways to make it work, and being open-minded about implementing those strategies. Just like, an athlete, that if you want to get faster or have better endurance, you have to do sprints, or you have to, push your body a different way.
Right.
Our mind is the same way. I have to get out there and be in public if I have social anxiety. I have to put myself in that situation, or I'm never going to see that, wow, in this crowd, there's no lion that's chasing me and trying to eat me. And I literally use that example all the time. I tell my clients, look around. Is there a lion? Yeah. Is there somebody chasing you with a machete? Is there a creepy clown from a horror movie that's trying to kill you? Don't go in the, dark house. But if you're in the middle of, a social event and you can see an exit and there's no imminent danger, your anxiety is a response to an old stimulus.
Right.
And we can retrain that. We can make it go away. It's why we dive under the table when we listen to our dad's voicemail. We're like, old response.
Right.
Don't do it. Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, and that's really good stuff for people that struggle with, because I think a lot of people live in that fight or flight scenario, and
Yes.
they don't realize that they live there,
No, it's
because
normal.
I think, and one of the things that helped me is several years ago, just cutting back on how much television I watched. Because I used to be addicted to television. I mean, it's on all the time, and so it was like, okay, well, I'm gonna turn it off at this points of the day and start there. And now it's to where, like, I actually question when it's on. I'm like, do we need that on? Like, let's
Yeah.
turn it off. Let's connect as a family. Let's, and it's, I think what it's done for me is that it's prevented that just continual overload of information from my brain, and so my brain can slow down and stop and relax.
Right.
And whether it's getting rid of feelings or connecting with my feelings or understanding, or just being like, and part of that maybe, it's easier, maybe easier for me because I am a long distance runner, and so people always ask me, like, how do you run 10 miles and not get bored? I'm like, I just don't. I look around, I see things.
Yeah.
How can you be with yourself for an hour or an hour and a half and not have any other stimulus, and you know, just connect with your mind and your thoughts? But from doing that, from quite honestly, from turning the TV off, is where I was able to write 2 books. I never would have written 2 books if I would have been
Yes.
stuck to the TV. I can guarantee you that.
Oh, no doubt. I say that all the time. I do my most creative work when I'm out walking
Mm-hmm.
or on the treadmill, running or something like, because my brain is concentrating on that physical ability. It's focused on its movement. It has
Mm-hmm.
the ability to, like, think outside of things when I'm not focusing on any other mental stimulus. I'm focusing
Right.
on a physical stimulus.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about what we're watching.
Yeah.
We're watching One the News, which has nothing good to report.
Mm-hmm.
We're watching unrealistic, Law and Orders, where we have crime that's solved in, 45 minutes with commercials in between.
Right.
And we have all of these, even like I'm addicted to the Hallmark Channel right now, these, like,
Right.
Christmas movies that we can get all caught up in this romance of this movie that's the beauty of the holiday season. But for someone who has no family or
Mm-hmm.
is not in tune with that's depression right there, because we believe what we're seeing on TV as reality.
Right.
It's why everything has a happy ending in a love story like that, and
Yep.
how, we solve a crime in 45 minutes and the bad guy always gets caught.
Yep.
We're watching violence and we're watching drama and chaos, and we're believing a skewed perspective of our world
Right.
around us
Right.
as it's being reported and presented. And it's difficult to separate from that reality
Yeah.
when you're watching it constantly. I
Yep.
mean, I've heard people that tell me they yell at the TV, and I'm like, well, who are you yelling at? Like, who's listening to you? Like, what are you
Right.
yelling at? They're like,
Yeah.
well, he shouldn't be saying those things. And I'm like, but he can't hear you. Like,
Right.
why are you giving this so much energy? Like,
Yeah.
imagine if you turned that energy into something creative, into something
Yep.
productive. If I used the time I wasted yelling at the TV, I could be writing books. I could be,
Right.
out doing joyful activities. Instead, I'm going to yell at the newscaster because I don't agree with him. To me, that just is frustrating,
Yeah.
and I'm wasting my energy and my talents on things that, one, he doesn't care about me, even if he did know about me.
Right.
I mean, I had that conversation with someone over the election. Like, I understand why everyone's so worked up, but like, neither one of the candidates care about me. Like,
Right.
I'm just one of many.
Yeah.
So for me to put that amount of energy into it, I couldn't do it. And many people disagree with me on that. Although I think it's tending more towards the consensus of no one wants to hear about it anymore anyway,
Yeah.
because we're so tired of it.
Yeah.
But, where is my energy better serving me? How can I direct it so that it benefits me, not, tears me down?
Right.
From a mental or a physical standpoint, again, they're both related. If I'm stuck in a place of anxiety, go run a mile and try to breathe. Impossible.
Right.
But if I have a clear mind and I can, let my body relax enough, not so hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Very true. And I love what you said about, because it's, as an entrepreneur, one of the things that, you say you start a business and it's like, okay, how I need clients, I need customers. How is this all going to grow? And I think there's a large, at least from the people that I've talked to that have started businesses and started their own thing, it's a large initial, like, oh, people are going to just find me and it's all going to be great. And I'm going to have just this flux of people that want to, and then the reality strikes of like, oh, nobody knows who I am. Yes. And, so to your point of like, those people that you're yelling at that, are national broadcasters or, the coach of your team, and you're yelling at them because they're putting the wrong player in or whatever. It's like they're so not interested in what you're doing because they're so laser focused, and that's how they got where they are.
Yeah.
They're so laser focused in what they want to do and achieve. And for, I think each individual, if we become that laser focused in what our purpose and our goal is, then we can achieve things that are far beyond we could even imagine right now. Absolutely. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen tomorrow, though.
Absolutely
like you said,
not.
You've got to stay in the moment and know that the things I'm doing today are going to, hopefully 5 years from now, 10 years from now, create a better life. But I can't do anything about that better life until I deal with right now and do it correctly right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that, and about them, they're focused on what they're doing. Most people, we go about our day worrying about what other people are thinking about us, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm going about my day and I'm like, gosh, what does that person think of me? What does that person think of me? What does that person think of me? Well, guess what? Every one of those people is thinking the same thing about me. What is she thinking about me? Why is she looking at me like that? We spend so much of our energy worried about what other people are thinking about ourselves, mm-hmm. Yet they're doing the same thing. Nobody's thinking about me but me. They're worried about what I'm thinking about them.
Yep.
And if we all stopped doing that and just interacted from that perspective, people are more concerned. We as humans are mm-hmm. so self-absorbed and ego-driven. Yep. When we get heart-centered and we stop worrying about those things and we start thinking about, what can I do to better serve? What can I do how can I better serve myself and those that I'm here to help?
Right.
Yeah, I definitely was of that thinking when I started. Like, I'm just going to hang out my little shingle and people are going to mm-hmm. be banging on my office door for services. And you learn quickly that it's not that way. Yeah. That it definitely takes some hard work, and the reward in it for me, when I got really aligned with what I do and where my passion is, that began to just come into my experience. When I have a quote I use all the time that one of my previous coaches said. She says, release yourself from the outcome. And when I do something, I do it with my greatest set of authentic intention, and then I release myself from it. And, I've released it into the universe. The universe knows exactly what I want. I asked for it enough.
Right.
I don't need to control the rest of it. As those things find me, I notice them, the opportunities present. And, I have struggled with that belief over time, because sometimes mm-hmm. it doesn't happen in my time frame, like I want it now, but we are so programmed to get everything in an instant, right? We can just text somebody and they answer right away.
Yep.
And we want what we want in this moment. But when I have stopped and really just taken a look around and paid attention, everything I've ever asked for and more has found its way into my experience.
Right.
I would have missed it if I was still pushing forward going, I want this, 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 and this. But, that attitude of being grateful, of gratitude, of saying, wow, look at the abundance around me. There's no lack. There's plenty for all of us.
Right.
We get that. Well, if that person gets that money, there's not going to be any left for me. Well, that's not true. We'll just make more. We'll print more.
Right.
There'll be more.
Right.
There's always more.
Right.
And it's interesting. I've been reading Think and Grow Rich. And when I first heard this book, it's an older book. And I was like, oh, I never want to read that. Like, you can't think and get rich. Like, what a stupid concept. And then I started listening to it through Audible and reading it along with it. And, in the 12 criteria he lists as defining richness, money is the number 12. It's the bottom. It's the last one. And, personal connection and love and joy, like all of these things are so far above money. And like, I never would have read the book if I hadn't heard about someone else talking about it in another Audible. And I was like, all right, I'm going to check that out.
Yeah.
And I opened my mind to go, all right, let me check this out. And I learned so much just from that list of 12 things, like the 12 riches that we have, that we are so not even paying attention to, because we're so money driven in our society, right? We need so much to survive. We could go on and on about that for days and days.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's funny, because that's one of the things that actually last week my wife and I were having a conversation as the year's coming to the end, and we're like, oh my gosh, this has been such a tough year. And we bought a juice bar at the beginning of the year, and then of course the restrictions happened. And so that's cost us a lot of money. And that we instead of making us money, and all the other things. But I was like, well, we did this and we did this and we did this. And like so many things that were accomplished that were goals of ours that had nothing to do with finances, nothing to do with money. It was just, did we set a goal and did we achieve it? And it's, when you think about those things and you break it apart, you're like, well, this was a good year.
Yeah.
But, when we look at the bank account, we just go, oh, this year sucked.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so crazy how much we have put, even myself and I know that that's coming, and I know that is something that I'm trying to avoid, but still put so much pressure on that side of the equation, of the financial side of it.
Absolutely. Because we know we need that to survive.
Right.
And we focus, on how we really get caught up in what society tells us is once you have all of this, you've arrived. That's a huge get more, make more, go on any Facebook or any of that stuff, and everyone's posting, oh, look at, if you sign up with me for coaching, you're going to make this much money in the first month. I mean, it's everywhere right now. We're just pushing money, and people, that's what is a motivator for so many people. And when I really stopped this year, I was able to go, wow, like how much money I was wasting on just like running around doing nothing because I was killing time, when I couldn't do that anymore. I was like, gosh, I'm wasting so much time, energy, and money. Yeah. And, scaling back amidst a shutdown, like, okay, I can't go out to eat. So what am I going to, this isn't open. I don't need to go there. And then not wanting to go anywhere. How many things fell into place, and financially it was challenging, but gosh, the personal growth I had this year amidst this pandemic and not having anything else to do, like the time I spent with me and reflecting on what I wanted to achieve and what I was trying to learn and goals that I wanted to set, they became so much more important. Like the wealth in that alone it's not measurable in dollars, it's like that commercial, it's priceless. Yep. Just being able to reflect on it. And I think a lot of times we look at this year and we're like, wow, this year sucked, because we look at it as a collective, like for our world, this year was really rough. And I also, I truly believe Mother Nature always has her way of doing her somebody said trimming the fat, but
Yeah.
I didn't really like that. Like really, putting things
But
back
it
in
is,
perspective for
It's,
us.
yeah.
Yeah, the universe has a way of getting control again.
Yep.
And if this year didn't prove that, not that the government was trying to as well, but like really the universe basically said, hey, everybody, stay home and let things
Right.
recover.
Right.
So yeah, very cool stuff happened in 2020. Makes me excited for 2021. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we see some really great things come from this.
Right.
I think it helped a lot of people.
And I think that, one of the things that I've heard multiple people talk about is, and I can't tell you exactly how many, but if you look back at the 1918 pandemic and, the flu there, and you look back at like the Great Depression, like how many things were created, invented, and, in a lot of times in recessions that are longer recessions, like some of the biggest inventions and the greatest minds come out of those times because they've got time to sit back and think. They've got time to sit back and create because there is no more hustle and bustle and we've all trying to keep up. It's that forced time out.
Yes.
And it's like we've talked about, it's like if you take that time to just slow down your brain, slow down your body, slow down everything and just connect and make sure that you're on the right path. I think
Absolutely.
That's a lot of times when things just go boom. And like you said, I think the next year is going to be huge in so many different ways, whether this continues or not, just because there's so many things that are going to come up and you're going to go like, I've never heard of that. I've never seen that before. This is an amazing invention. This is an amazing idea. Like, I think it's coming.
Oh, I agree. I think that was like a big awakening this year for a lot of people. What really was important and what wasn't, and kind of adapting.
Right.
We are definitely, if nothing else, resilient, and we don't give ourselves credit for how adaptable we are.
Right.
And we are. We take the situation and we can learn from it, and that's our biological right, which is such a beautiful thing. I was telling a client earlier today, if I'm a squirrel and I bury nuts, I forget where I put them. I'm not going to go, I probably should put them in a different place so I remember where I put them. I'm going to continue to do the same thing over and over again because
right.
I function by instinct. But as a human, I have the ability to go, that didn't work out so well for me. Maybe I should try it a different way.
Right.
The dog that keeps eating socks and has surgery is not going to go, I shouldn't eat the socks because they had to cut me open. It's still going to eat the socks.
Right.
So pick up your socks.
Right.
But I can go, that made me sick. I'm probably not going to do that again.
Right.
Don't eat shrimp. It makes you sick. Okay. Don't eat shrimp. But, other species, they function on instinct, but we have this ability to just continually grow. Mm-hmm. And what an amazing experience that is. I always joke around and say, I don't want to get to the end of my days and go, man, I'm glad I survived that. I want to get there and be like, that was great. I really lived my life to the fullest and experienced joys and learned about myself and grew and shared and just, all of the things that we've been given the opportunities to do.
Right. No, I fully agree.
Yeah.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
And we've been talking for a while, and I want to respect your time.
I could talk to you forever, but I get it. Yeah.
So, just sort of to wrap up, and we sort of touched on this a little bit, but I do want to for somebody that's listening that did have that, it's that unusually tough year. It's that crazy year. We're getting ready to start the next year. Knowing that we're not going to be able to just wake up tomorrow and everything's gone and it's all changed and it's all back to, quote unquote, normal. I was talking to one of the guys I know in the grocery store this morning and I said, I don't think it's ever going to be normal, but it's going to be interesting to see what comes from this in a growth and in a positive way. Hopefully we've hit bottom and we're coming back out to a new, perspective of things. But for those people that have had, that mental toughness, they've been hit. Like what's one thing or two things that like as you go into the year, focus on these things, focus on this, and try and avoid the anxious things?
Yeah, really find one positive, any one thing, something that is the promise of hope, right? Like
Right.
I look at even just getting COVID and going, all right, well, I'm not in the hospital. I didn't die. I
Right.
recovered from it. Or am recovering from it. Like one
Right.
positive thing, financial hits have been so hard this year. So what one thing, like I could always downsize should I have to,
Right.
there's always one way to change a negative to a positive. So even if it seems impossible to dig down deep and find that one thing, they're listening to this podcast and there's one positive thing. Like they were directed to this podcast, which is full of all this positivity, that there's a reason for that. I have conversations with so many people and only end up having, video chats or discussions with a select few. There's a reason for that. We're driven to each other for reasons that are unknown to us at the time. That's happening all around, even in these really tough times. As bad as the year may have been, there's something that if you take a moment and just sit back and reflect or meditate, get into nature and see what evolved, there's one thing, and carry that one thing into the new year and focus on that one thing, because from that one positive, there's going to be more will grow. When we can see that one good thing, that one light, it's easier to see more light. But if we're just looking at the dark, you can't see any light in that. And if it's really, really been a struggle, reach out for help. There's help everywhere. There really is. Even in this situation, this is like free help. There's podcasts and just tons of people that we can reach out to for guidance and support. And for the majority of us that are serving for a purpose because it's our passion, we're not above going, hey, I'll get on a call with you and see what I can do to help. I do it all the time, and we don't know who we're helping, just that one comment is just being available to that one person, but there's always hope. I just keep, my moving forward is always in faith that everything is always working out to my benefit. Even the really bad things have given me opportunities that I never would have had if I didn't make bad choices or, go down the wrong road. I ended up maybe a roundabout way, but I got where I was supposed to be. It's been amazing. Yeah.
So before we sign off, how would someone, if they wanted to get in touch with you, how would they get in touch with you?
They can email me. It is, you can put my email on there. It's Kelley at Kelley Sgroi with the letters LMHC.com. They can find me on Facebook. I am Kelley Bannon Sgroi on Facebook, or I have my women's group, which is Know Your Worth. It's the empowerment group for women. We call it midlife women right now, but I'm not sure I like that. I think everybody could be in a midlife when we're trying to make some changes. Google me, Kelley Sgroi. I show up I'm here in Florida, so I have a local practice here. So throw my name on there, and hopefully nothing bad comes up from my past. But I think that I've gotten a hold of all that stuff. There's no random stuff out there. But Psychology Today as well. I'm listed on Psychology Today for anyone in the area. But there's probably can find me on Instagram, Kelley Sgroi. I keep it pretty simple, make it pretty easy. I'm hearing all this, rumors about Facebook closing down and stuff. And I'm like, that's all right. People can still find me. I'm out there. Yeah.
Well, and I'm actually reading a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport right now.
Yeah.
And the part I'm reading right now is he's talking about people that are well-known nationally for what they do and have zero presence on social media because they're all about doing what they do, and social media doesn't pertain to what they do, and
Right.
that's not the way for everybody, but he's like making the point that if you do really good work, you can be known no matter what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't need to be there. Yeah. I find that when I'm busy doing my work, I don't have any time to be on social media, right? Because I'm working.
Right.
And I'd much rather be working than, being on social media, seeing what everyone else is doing.
Right.
But with, everything shut down for a lot of us, that's how we have been able to survive.
Oh yeah.
Is utilizing those platforms. But yeah, I'm generally available, shoot me an email or a message on Facebook, and I'd be happy to offer assistance.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Great.
It's been so great. I could sit and talk to you for days.
I know.
It's so awesome to run into people that have the same mindset and philosophies. And I think it happens more and more as we evolve in this journey. So,
well, I think that's that law of attraction. I think that
absolutely,
once you start putting out, once you know what you're supposed to put out, and you put it out there, it's going to attract the other people.
Absolutely. Yep. It's been awesome chatting.
Yep, it's been great. Thank you so much.